This is Stuff You Like. You can call me Ursa, and having short episodes is really good, but sometimes it means that you have to leave things out. So this is the first in an intermittent sub-series of Stuff You Like called Second Look, where we will be going back and talking about things that I've talked about already. The last time we looked at Labyrinth, we used it as a jumping off point to talk about the hero's journey, and we talked about Harry Potter and Star Wars and all that kind of stuff as well. But I have so much more to say. The plot, it goeth thusly. Sarah, bratty teenager, wishes her stepbrother away to the goblins and then has 13 hours to run the labyrinth to get him back. She faces many challenges and defeats the Goblin King, marking her giant steps towards maturity and adulthood without losing the magic of imagination and childhood. Now, Adolescence presented as an ever-changing, confusing maze-type structure where the landmarks keep changing, the goalposts keep shifting, and you can never go back, has some fairly self-evident significance. As does the fact that Sarah's Labyrinth experience is tailor-made for her, by her, and is entirely about her. Whether the Labyrinth is a 100% real experience, or a chitty chitty bang bang-esque story within a story, or just a really trippy dream she had, it's all hers. Sarah's room provides the ingredients for the physical appearance of the Labyrinth, like Hoggle, Jareth, Peach Dream Dresses, Sir Didymus, the Escher Room, but her mind provides the emotional and mental challenges. The author of Girls Next Door once said to me that it's being confused that helps Sarah through the Labyrinth, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. If it's an actual thing that happened to her and the Goblin King is real, then she has him stumped, because nothing works. She doesn't know who she is, and that means Jareth doesn't either. Bribes don't work, threats don't work, childhood nostalgia doesn't work, adult debauchery doesn't work. What will work? If the Labyrinth is wholly Sarah's creation, it's just as confused about her desires as she is. Who am I is the question that we ask the most during adolescence, and when we get older we figure out that we never really know. We imagine that when we grow up, we will know exactly who we are, and then we will know exactly how that means we should act and think and be. We imagine that we'll find a box to put ourselves into, but even though labels are useful, they can never fully define the infinite complexity that is a single human being. We are not numbers, we are free people. What Sarah learns is that she is a hero. Not a child, not an adult yet either, but always a hero, someone who completes her quest and who does the right thing. Someone who fights her way to the castle through dangers untold and hardships unnumbered and takes back the child. As an adolescent, someone on the edge of womanhood, both the temptations of childhood and the temptations of adulthood are presented as ways of getting her to leave her quest, and both of them are presented as kind of monstrous. And yes, we talked about this last time, but Labyrinth has very overt examples of child versus adult temptations, and I wanted to talk about that in more detail. Growing up is about dealing with temptations and prioritising that which is most important while still remembering to have fun, but we'll get to that in a second. The childhood temptation is the gratuitous collection of useless trinkets over the safety of a real living person. Not that childhood is bad, but that trying to live it exclusively when you are in fact growing up will mean that you hurt the people around you. While there is this toxic culture of boys will be boys and absolving young men of all responsibility when they commit truly heinous crimes, there's also an expectation that when you grow up you are a man and you do manly things and you rely on yourself, and men tend not to be infantilized the way that women, particularly young women, are. Well, everybody gets it kind of from both sides. Young women get the be a sexualized, free, independent agent, by which I mean have sex with me, and at the same time they get, you don't really know your own mind, you don't really know yourself, you're just a child. You know, you can't really make up your own mind about things. Oh, you just need to find a nice man to look after you. What, you don't want kids? Oh, you'll change your mind someday. You should really give him a chance, he's a nice guy. I mean, you are a young lady and young ladies are as changeable as weathercocks. You want to grow up and be a leader and change the world? Oh, isn't it adorable? She thinks she's people. Childhood temptation lets you palm off the responsibility of adulthood onto others. And the world is an exhausting and horrifying place sometimes, which is why it's tempting. Adulthood temptation is David Bowie and his anime villain ensembles. And adults claiming or gaining understanding of their sexuality isn't bad, the same way that, you know, childhood and indeed collecting toys are not bad. But while childhood temptation is about regressing back to who you were when you thought Happy Meal toys were awesome, adult temptation is about who you might become and what that might mean for you. If you are responsible for making your own choices, and not just the choices of childhood, you know, red pajamas or blue pajamas, then you also have the possibility that you will make the wrong choices. Of course, added to this is the cultural narrative that portrays relationships between men and women as a sort of predator-prey setup. Being desired and desirable is great, right? Except when it's really, really not. Being a woman and going on dates is great, right? Except when there's the constant background hum of your worth deriving solely from what other people think of you and your perceived sexual availability and attractiveness. Look at the other dancers in their lovely dresses with their demon masks. They are laughing at her. They are judging her. And that fear, the fear of the censure of others, is huge, especially when you're a teenage girl. And every choice is a bad choice. You date too little, you're a prude, or you date too much, or you don't know everything there is to know about adult life and sexuality already. Ugh, you're such a baby. Oh, teenage girls, man, they're so catty and stupid and selfish. On and on it goes until you figure out that there is no right way to be, and you are angry. But before that, when you're still trying, you're just afraid. And there's a lot of fear in this sequence. There's the desire too, and it's very real. The big musical number, the poofy 80s princess dress, David Bowie, the fascination and the temptation of sexuality is there. But the fear, not just of becoming an adult or of sexuality, but of becoming the kind of adult that uses their sexuality as an excuse to abandon responsibilities, that's very real, especially for Sarah, the child of the mother who we infer never calls. Adolescence is hard because you have growing responsibility, but you don't have a lot of power yet. You can't vote, you can't drive. Your choices are constrained, and so are your horizons sometimes. After all, who is Sarah to emulate? She's not like her stepmother. Her stepmother doesn't understand her. She's not like her mother. Or is she? And if she is like her mother, does that mean that she will leave the kid behind? That's why the fever dream peach ball comes before the toy collector. Sarah is taking steps towards adulthood, independence, sexuality, but they are frightening, and the main available female role models are her biological mother, who we infer she never sees, or her stepmother, who interferes and bosses and tries to push her into adulthood at a pace she isn't ready for.
I'd like it if you had a date. You should have dates at your age.
Ah, Sarah, you're home.
And she does this out of love and concern, but it's still massively unhelpful. But Sarah chooses neither of these options. In her story, Sarah decides that she will be queen. And this is the power of story and of imagination. You can break out of the roles immediately available to you. You can become someone else entirely. You can choose from a lot more options. You can grow up and still have fun or collect toys or LARP. Labyrinth is at least partially about realising that you have the power and you can choose. And choose she does with her immortal arc words.
You have no power over me.
And this is growing up, this is adolescence, figuring out who and what gets to have influence over you, and knowing that, in your own domain at least, you are queen. With all the power and all the responsibility that that entails. You know, I think it's time to break out the tiara again. Especially because I got through that entire review of Labyrinth without once mentioning David Bowie's Dance, Magic Dance, Magic Dance.